Our beautiful environment, degraded and in need of renewal and protection. The earth is a beautiful place, and its beauty manifests itself not only in its physical features but also in its aesthetic characteristics. Tropical forests, seas and oceans, hills and mountains, plains and plateaux, desert, outer sphere, species of plants, animals, birds, and microorganisms, that is, biodiversity, and so on, capture the physical. The gentle waves of the sea hitting the shores at low tides, sun setting on the seas near the shores, beauty of the arrays of stars when the sky is bright at night, musical sound of many waterfalls as their waterfall down the hills, and so on, capture some of the aesthetic aspects. Birds and reptiles join in unison in the ushering the dawn of each day. The delicate yet attractive position of the Earth planet in relation to other planets in its solar system shows another aspect of its beauty. The planet Earth derives its energy from the sun. Correspondingly, if the sun dies, then the life which it supports will go into disintegration. The Earth, with radius of about 6,400 kilometers, is a very small planet and really of no serious consequence to its solar system and the universe, because other parts of the universe can survive conveniently without it. The Earth is made up of different layer strata, namely the crust, outer mantle, inner mantle, and the core. The atmosphere is a thin layer that envelopes the Earth and consists of 4% carbon dioxide, 21% of oxygen, and 75% of nitrogen oxide. There is always a balance among these gases for everything to the normal. Other layers include primarily the domain of human activities and the presence of biodiversity of fauna and flora. The planet Earth is not an island unto itself. It belongs to the universe with the mysteries. The universe includes 125 billion galaxies, billion stars and their planets, gas and dust that extend over many thousands of light years. A galaxy forms a unit within the universe, and it is a massive ensemble of hundreds of millions of stars, all gravitationally interacting and orbiting about a common center. In the context of its relationship, the Earth's ecosystem maintains itself primarily in four ways. First, it maintains a temperature range between 15 and 35 degrees Celsius that is optimal for life on Earth. Secondly, it maintains a relative constant salinity of the seawater at approximately 3.4%. A salt content higher than 6% would terminate all life in the seas. Thirdly, a constant 21% oxygen content in the air has remained stable. Finally, a protective layer of ozone at the stratosphere has shielded the Earth's surface up to now from the ultraviolet radiation of the sun. Most ecosystems in their natural environment develop a dynamic stability for surviving. However, if an ecosystem receives an outside massive influence, it may collapse altogether. The health planet supports human life. The planet supports human life in many ways. The first is by way of provision of services by which the harvestable products of foods, medicines, fresh water, wood, and fibers, fuel, wood, and other non-wood products, including the genetic resources for improving these products, flow from ecosystem. In addition, biodiversity boosts ecosystem productivity, where every species, no matter how small it is, has an important role to play. Second, it regulates services for local and global climate through carbon sequestration, regulation of water quality, diseases, pollution, and flow. For instance, a large number of plant species means a greater variety of crops. Greater species of diversity ensures natural sustainability for all life forms. Every ecosystem can better withstand and recover from a variety of disasters. Provision of cultural services is the third. This includes aesthetic, spiritual, educational, scientific, and recreational values. The last, in its supporting services, it provides through its role in making the above three functions to happen, and by so doing meditates nutrients cycling, soil formation, pollination, and primary production. The ecosystem services are intrinsically linked to the constituents of human well-being of security, availability, and access to the basic needs of livelihood of food, shelter, and other materials. Other areas are those of health, recreation, ecotourism, spiritual well-being, and culture. Maintenance of biodiversity thus unites human generation of the past, present, and future. It is therefore mandatory that natural resources which are intrinsically connected with biodiversity be protected. The major classes of these natural resources consist of agricultural land, forest land, and its multiple products and services. Natural land area preserved for aesthetic, recreational, and scientific purposes. Others are fresh and salt water, fisheries, mineral resources that include the mineral fuels and non-fuels, the renewable non-minerals, energy sources of solar, tidal, wind, and geothermal systems. Water resources, the waste assimilative capacity of all parts of the environment. Some natural resources stocks are renewable by natural or artificial processes, while others are non-renewable. Those that are renewable often depends on appropriate non-destructive methods of management, as with farmland, fisheries, and waste disposals, since some changes in natural resources system are irreversible. In the assessment of natural resources stocks, it is important that interaction with other systems and potentially irreversible changes be taken into account. In the context of Nigeria ecology, petroleum and its products, timber and non-timber products play a central part in the socio-cultural and economic life of Nigerians. Timber and non-timber products are often used for household utensils, carvings, agricultural tools, cheese-stick, and musical instruments. The main product is fieldwood. Cheese-stick, in terms of volume of wood content, are the most expensive wood in Nigerian forests. These species are intensively harvested in the rainforest zones of Edo, Ondo, Oyo, Ekiti, and Osun states. Virtually all aspects of shrubs and trees are used as fuelwood. Fuelwood is collected from cultivated and uncultivated areas in all the ecozones. The Earth's ecosystem, human activities and their consequences. In relation to Earth's ecosystem, human beings are now introducing an unacceptable negative influence that the Earth ecosystem may not be able to accommodate. If its continuous existence is to be guaranteed, unfortunately, it is not only the delicate balance of the earth that has been affected, but also human beings have degraded the earth, causing global warming, a phenomenon that is threatening continuous existence of the planet Earth. Global warming is leading to climate change. Global warming may be referred to as the gradual increase of the temperature of the planet. This accentuates the rise in sea level, which culminates in flooding and melting of ice caps from polar and mountain glaciers. The impacts of rising sea level include loss of coastal ecosystem, flooding of cities, displacement of coastal inhabitants, and increased vulnerability to storm surges. Bangladesh, one of the poorest nations in the world, is projected to lose 17.5% of its land if sea level rises above 40 inches, that is 1 meter. Tens of thousands of people are likely to be displaced, and the country's agricultural system will be adversely affected. Coastal flooding will threaten animals, plants, and freshwater supplies. The current danger posed by storm surges when cyclones hit Bangladesh is likely to increase. The Majuro Atoll in the Pacific Marshall Island is projected to lose 80% of its land with a 20-inch, that is 0.5 meters, rise in the sea level. Many of the islands will simply disappear under the rising sea. A similar fate awaits other islands throughout the South Pacific and Indian Oceans, including many in the Maldives and French Polynesia. Coral reefs, which protect many of these islands, will be submerged, subjecting the local people to heightened storm surges and disrupted coastal ecosystem. Tourism and local agriculture will be severely challenged. Other impacts will include incidents of the outbreak of diseases such as yellow fever, malaria, and natural disasters. Cold winter weather reduces the spread of infection diseases by killing infectious organisms and carrier species such as mosquitoes. Warmer weather, on the other hand, could increase the spread of malaria fever and yellow fever. The possible increase in flooding and damage to water sewage infrastructure can further encourage the spread of diseases. Rising level requires many different local responses. For instance, urban areas on U.S. coastline could be surrounded by rising seawater. Cities may require extensive infrastructural development to assure freshwater supplies, secure transportation, and protect people from flooding and storm surge. Sea walls can be built to protect cities and roads from rising sea. Better constructed buildings may also require withstanding the increasingly intense storms that are likely to result from global warming. Fresh water supply is a concern as seawater penetrates groundwater aquifers, which become sea level rise due to global warming, will be usually huge, as the experience of Nigeria in respect for the Barbage in Lagos demonstrated. The low-lying lands and heavily populated agricultural zones are vulnerable to rising sea levels. Lagos is only 3 meters above sea level and shares the fate of similar cities like Calcutta, Shanghai, Bangkok, Jakarta, Tokyo, London, New York, Miami, and Venice. Another effect of global warming is that climate change tends to extreme climate events, to which implies an immense social cost. For instance, Hurricane Gilbert in 1988 caused damage estimated at over $870 million in Jamaica. Global warming, while posing risks through flooding, could also endanger economic growth through sustainability of biomass production. There are a few of the many examples of the impact of sea level rise on humans. The impact of global warming will be felt across the globe. All humans are now in a global ship in the ocean. If it capsizes, no one will be saved. Fundamentally, the human civilization has changed some of the crucial relationships among the world species on the one and between those species and their habitats on the other. Therefore, the environment that inhibits all things has become increasingly tenuous, and this in turn has begun to threaten the quality of life, both for human and non-human, on the planet. Primarily, this way of living, so-called civilization, especially in the last 3 centuries, did not give any regard to the original delicate balance that existed among the inhabitants of the development that threatens and undermines the integrity of fundamental life support system. These are the air we breathe, the water we drink, the food we eat, and the diverse fabric of living things that provides emotional and spiritual sustenance as well. It must be mentioned, however, that not all aspects of human civilization stand condemned. Human activities, mainly associated with the burning of fossil fuel, have changed the chemistry of the atmosphere. The global atmospheric concentration of carbon dioxide has increased from a pre-industrial value of about 280 ppm, that is parts per million, to 379 ppm in 2005, while pre-industrial value of methane was 715 ppb, that is parts per billion, has increased to 1774 ppb in 2005. The atmospheric concentration of nitrous oxide jumped from pre-industrial value of about 270 ppb to 319 ppb in 2005, as the volume of what are called greenhouse gases like carbon monoxide, methane, nitrous oxide, and chlorofluorocarbons increases, the temperature close to the Earth's surface rises gradually. Carbon dioxide is produced primarily when fossil fuels are burned to provide energy for expanding industrial society and is the guiltiest of the greenhouse gases in respect of the global warming. Whether it is directly related to the increase in greenhouse gases or not, the climate records, for instance in the UK, show that 9 of the 10 hottest years since records began have occurred since 1983, and 5 of those years happened in the 1990s. Many of the seas have been seriously degraded in recent decades, and so many oceans. These oceans contain not only most of the planet's water, but also a very diverse range of living organisms. About 300,000 marine species have been identified, but it is commonly heard by marine scientists that there is at least double that amount of species. It would be tragic to think that much of this marine life may be destroyed long before some of them are even identified. Human activities have led to other manifestations of environmental degradation, creating pollution of various types. Wasted, as in toxic, industrial, domestic, solid, acid rain, desertification, deforestation, ozone layer depletion, and erosion. In the context of environmental degradation in Nigeria caused by the activities of the nationals in general, every state of the federation suffers from one form of environmental problem or the other. Center for Arid Zone Studies in Nigeria affirmed that desertification is by far the most pressing environmental problems in the northern state along the Niger Republican borders. The same idea was affirmed by Muhammad Al-Kali, a professor and vice chancellor of Yobe University, when he said, "The fighting of the desert is as critical as the ecological crisis of the Niger Delta, which appears now to be the major agenda of the present government. The desert is already here with us, not even far away from Abuja, the Federal Capital Territory, where Harmattan dust becomes thicker every year, leaving behind the base spots of sand dunes. Desertification is the major all-season environmental malaise plaguing most states in northern Nigeria, where more than 90% of its citizens rely on fuel wood. The activities of herdsmen, whose animals graze on the available vegetation, compound the problem, leading to the forest retreat and a progressively low annual cropping. Critical states in this respect include Kebbi, Zamfara, Katsina, Yobe, Sokoto, and Bauchi. Erosion, as another environmental problem in Nigeria, is found to be severe in Abia, Imo, Anambra, Enugu, Ondo, Edo, Ebonyi, Jigawa, Zamfara, Kebbi, Sokoto, and Gombe states. Soil erosion leading to gullies threatens communities. For instance, deep gullies in Kebbi threaten communities in Jeddah, Zuru, Shanga, Yauri, Arugungu, Arewa, Alero, Bagudo, and Brini Kebbi. In Noka, over time, more than 1,000 persons and over 4,000 families have lost their ancestral land to the menace of gully erosion in the towns of Nanka, Ekulobia, and Inewi. In Enugu State, Onitsha, Enugu Expressway at the Enugu North Council area was about splitting into two parts. In 2009, at Humahia community in Aguata Council area, erosion split the Ekulobia Oko Road into two. In 2005, over 250 families numbering close to 1,500 became homeless. Flooding. Another environmental problems occur throughout the country in three main forms. The first is the urban flooding, which mainly affects human livelihood, and it occurs in towns located on flat or low-lying terrain, usually with poor drainage systems. Such towns include Lagos, Maiduguri, Aba, Warri, Benin, and Ibadan. Deforestation has become a major environmental problem in Nigeria. This is due to hardwood logging and tremendous population growth being experienced in the country. Construction of developmental projects, their implementation, and related activities leading to industries, airports, recreational places, parks, mechanized farming, and housing estates, and so on also contribute to deforestation because they take and occupy space. One of the consequences of the deforestation is that there is an estimated 484 plant species as well as certain wildlife being threatened with extinction. The problem of industrial pollution is enormous. It is a serious problem in Nigeria. For instance, Nigeria has about 5,000 registered facilities and 10,000 small-scale industry operating illegally within residential premises. In places like Kano, Kaduna, and Lagos, colored out and heavily metal-laden effluents, especially from the textile, tannery, and paints industry, are discharged directly into open drains and water channels, constituting direct dangers to water users and biota downstream. Inappropriate agricultural practices, petroleum prospecting with its attendant oil pollution problems and gas flaring are some of the causes of land degradation in Nigeria. Furthermore, the typical Nigerian solid waste includes paper, food remnants, metal scraps, tin cans, rubber containers, plastics, cellophane bags, worn-out tires, and tubes. About 5,000 of the 7,000 metric tons of waste daily generated by Lagosians go into dumps at Ojota, which has become the biggest open dump in Lagos. The place harbors flies, fleas, mosquitoes, rats, and other vectors that could cause several diseases such as fever, malaria, filariasis, and yellow fever. Industrial waste is part of the residue of all manufacturing industry in Nigeria. The waste includes residues of power stations, burning coal, oil, gas, domestic waste, and unwanted byproducts of industry in urban centers. Disposing of domestic and industrial waste is leading, in some cases, to nightmare menacing our physical environment. Some of the industrial waste are often dumped on the ground, thrown into the stream or lakes, or even disposed of in deep methods of disposal in a deep hole in the ground. The most viable current practice for handling industrial waste is converting such waste into useful products. Certain waste such as metals, glass, plastics, and paper can be recycled into industrial raw materials. It has been demonstrated in many cases that medium-scale steel industry can be sourced from metal scraps. Paper converter plants such as the one operating at Erinle, Kwara State, a common establishment. It has to be acknowledged, however, that there are many non-convertible deadly industrial residues, which required careful and expert handling. This is necessary because lead intake, for instance, can lead to abortion, infant mortality, malformation of fetus, genetic mutilation, retarded growth, intoxication, depression of respiration, and chromosomal aberration. Observing the growing numbers of species pushed to extinction, growing numbers of people feel a sense of foreboding for the human future. In the looming threats to clean air, clean water, the integrity of the Earth's atmosphere, and in an era of diminishing resources, people are recognizing threats to their own well-being that are as real as military threats emanating from unarmed opponents. Ecological thinkers maintain as well that human beings have an obligation to be something other than a generalized predatory and destructive species. Rather, they must exercise wide stewardship over planets, wild things, and wild places, not just for human benefit, but also as a moral and ethical imperative. Many environmentalists see the connection between despoiled, depleted, and polluted lands and human misery. It is becoming increasingly clear that we cannot fully make peace until we make peace with our planetary environment. Furthermore, Barash and Webel observed that the tragedy of the global commons has global dimensions. For instance, the Scandinavian forests and lakes suffer from acid rain because of the effluent of Eastern European sources mainly, while Britain gets the economic benefit. Japan and Norway predictably defy international outcry while hunting the world's great whales to the verge of extinction. Brazil seeks to benefit economically from the Amazon rainforest, even though such benefits require that it be destroyed, to the ultimate detriment of everyone. Many environmental experts feel that we cannot continue on our present course much longer without causing irreversible damage. There could well be key thresholds in the planetary environment that, once crossed, may permanently impair the Earth's ability to meet our needs in the future. If the atmospheric load of greenhouse gases becomes too high, the ozone layer too sparse, soils too eroded, air and water pollution too severe, or some combination of these and other factors. If forest clearing and desertification go too far, then at some point the planetary may simply become incapable of nurturing life, regardless of our attempts to remedy things. Thus, it could be that the current generation has the enormous responsibility of determining the habitability of the planet, and not just for ourselves, but also for myriad other species as well. In this regard, time is not on our side, as Barash and Weber observed. Collective of public values like the need to protect human health, the need to use resources wisely, or the need to provide food, warmth, and accommodation not raise much debate. In addition, how does what should be forfeited today in order to do justice to future generations be assessed? Some other areas that call for investigation include the extent to which environmental problems can be solved by technological advances, which can contribute to rather than hinder economic growth. Such issues include management of biodiversity, disaster prediction, and management. Lastly, there is an increasing recognition that more works need to be done to assess the adequacy of the implementation and enforcement of environmental laws. At the international level, this lack of an effective remedy for any breaches or failure to implement has long been a cause for concern. Similarly, many regional, national, and local environmental directives are yet to be implemented. In particular, a number of cases in relation to the need for environmental impact assessment and statutory nuisances are being heard. The effect of human activities on the environment is big and complex, but they have affected sustainable development. And precautionary principle, Stockholm and Rio conferences of 1972 and 1992 respectively. There is need for them to be recognized and incorporated into official policy documents of nation states. Nigeria has demonstrated this tendency, especially in the inclusion of number 20 in its 1999 constitutions, in the establishment of Ministry of Environment and Urban Development and formulation of environmental and sciences and technology policies. Similarly, issues associated with the risk of deliberately planting of genetically modified seed, use of mobile phones, and their mask, the emission of dioxins from waste incinerations are apparent and constitute scares to communities and societies. Some human activities are gradually leading to unsustainable development and environmental degradation. This is calling for solutions. Global warming, the destruction of the ozone layer, acid rain, deforestation, and toxic waste are all global issues which require an apparently global response. In terms of the range of problems and issues, it encompasses such as air, water, noise pollution, waste management, pesticides, protection of an environment, conservation of wildlife, and so on. The issues are big and complex. They are big also in terms of the knowledge and skills required to understand even any single and particular issue. Furthermore, consequences of human activities have terrific implications, and so they are big in terms of the increasing complexity of environmental risk, which creates technological and scientific demands on regulators and agencies. Other manifestation of complexity includes the growth in emphasis on uniform and integrated planning of solutions to environmental problems, increase in institutional coherence, and the impact of regional and international regimes. The memory is still fresh of recent hurricanes, landslides, tsunami, floods, earthquakes, and fires. It is this dynamic, overwhelming, destructive capacity associated with climate change that makes it a different global socio-economic, developmental, and security problem. Unlike other problems like nuclear warfare, refugee, and poverty, which may be localized and whose solutions may be delayed, global warming is a problem that involves every nation, and the solution to it cannot be delayed. Any delay in addressing the problem promptly and radically too may mean that the entire humanity may perish sooner than later. This is a deadly serious implication.